In the marble silence of the Supreme Court chamber, Justice Kavanaugh leaned forward, trying to corner Jasmine Crockett with a smug trap. The nation held its breath. Her reply shattered everything. Hit subscribe before you hear it. There are rooms built for history, rooms that swallow you whole, that remind you with every echo, every shadow, that the nation's destiny has been decided here before, and could be decided again. The Supreme Court chamber is such a room. Its marble columns stretch skyward like guardians of a centuries-old promise. Its ceilings tower, painted with patterns that blur into infinity. Its benches creak with the weight of generations. In this chamber, silence is law. It is not ordinary silence. It is sacred. The silence of reverence, the silence of awe, the silence of fear. And then, on this day, that silence was broken. Not by gavel, not by clerk, not by oath, but by arrogance. Justice Brett Kavanaugh leaned forward, his smirk curling into something colder than humor. He asked Jasmine Crockett a question, not to gain clarity, but to set a trap. His words dripped with disdain. His tone dared her to falter. Before she could even form a reply, he scoffed. And then he laughed. The sound cut through the chamber like a blade dragged across glass. It wasn't just a laugh. It was dismissal. It was belittlement. It was the sound of centuries of elite power mocking voices it was never meant to hear. The audience gasped. Journalists froze. Pens hovering mid-air. Cameras zoomed. Red tally lights blinking like eyes. It was imbalance made audible. But what no one realized, not yet, was that this laugh, this trap, would not bury Jasmine Crockett. It would bury him. Her journey did not begin under chandeliers or ivy-draped halls. It began in the grit of the South, in working-class neighborhoods where struggle was daily bread. She grew up watching people fight systems designed to ignore them, neighbors evicted, wages stolen, communities abandoned. She saw the cruelty of unchecked power not in textbooks, but in lives unraveling in real time. Law became her weapon, not for prestige, not for titles, but for defense. She took on cases no one wanted, standing beside the accused, the silenced, the overlooked. Her preparation was legendary. Her boldness, undeniable. By the time she stepped into Congress, she had already built a reputation, not for rhetoric, but for receipts. She was the one who found the overlooked clause, the buried memo, the detail that cracked open hypocrisy. Feared for her research, respected for her resolve, underestimated at everyone's peril. She did not climb to power by being invited. She clawed her way in by refusing to be ignored. And on this day, she brought that same defiance to marble walls that had laughed at her. Brett Kavanaugh's path was carved in marble long before he stepped into it. Raised in privilege, polished at elite schools, groomed by establishment mentors, his rise was not a climb, but an ascent. Through clerkships, courtrooms, and corridors of power, his career was padded by ties stronger than talent alone. He was elevated not just for brilliance, but for loyalty, to ideology, to power, to the machine that placed him there. When nominated to the Supreme Court, it was at a fevered political moment, a storm of controversy and division. And yet he prevailed. The robe became his armor. The bench, his throne. Known for his sharp tongue, his impatient sighs, his mocking smirks, Kavanaugh carried himself as if the chamber belonged to him. He was accustomed to silencing challengers, to watching them shrink beneath his gaze. But arrogance has a weakness. It cannot imagine losing. And that blindness would soon cost him. The chamber glowed under camera lights, every angle recorded, every twitch magnified. Rows of journalists leaned forward, pens pressed to paper, recorders blinking red like tiny heartbeat monitors. Activists filled the gallery, their signs waiting outside, their eyes burning inside, waiting to see if courage could pierce marble. Security stood like statues. Clerks shuffled papers with quiet precision. The justices loomed in their black robes, high above like gods cloaked in centuries of tradition. But beneath the grandeur, the air crackled with unease. Because the stakes were enormous. The hearing was not simply about one case or one clash. It was about whether executive power could stretch without restraint, whether judicial independence still existed or had been eroded, whether America's courts belonged to the people who trusted them or the powerful who controlled them. This was more than testimony. It was a duel of ideologies. A congresswoman wielding truth like a scalpel. A justice wielding condescension like a hammer. And in this room, only one could win. Kavanaugh's voice was heavy, deliberate, sharpened with the arrogance of someone who had never been cornered. "So, Congresswoman," he said, pausing just long enough to turn attention his way, "would you defend unchecked power if it favored your side?" The words were not neutral. They were bait. A trap designed to paint Crockett as a partisan hypocrite, reckless, self-serving. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Reporters scribbled with renewed urgency. Crockett inhaled, ready to answer. But he cut her off. The scoff. The laugh. The smirk widening across his face like a mask of superiority. "Answer carefully," he sneered, chuckling, the sound bouncing off marble walls with chilling ease. Gasps erupted. The tension thickened. The imbalance was naked now. An elite justice mocking, an underdog cornered. The gallery shifted uncomfortably. Activists clenched fists. Reporters looked up from their notes, waiting. Crockett's jaw tightened. Her silence stretched, but her eyes burned steady. The trap was set. The ridicule was real. The audience was desperate for retaliation. And she was ready to deliver it. Jasmine Crockett did not raise her voice. She didn't flinch, didn't rush. Instead, she reached into her folder. Her hands moved with the deliberate calm of someone loading a weapon. The shuffle of papers grew deafening in the silence. She pulled a single page, highlighted in yellow, and held it firmly. Her voice, low but sharp as steel, rang across the chamber. "If you're worried about unchecked power, justice, start with this." Every head turned. Cameras zoomed in. "This," she said, raising the page, "is your opinion. Signed by you. Granting one man, the president, the power to fire independent watchdogs without restraint." The room froze. Gasps spread like wildfire. Pens dropped. A journalist muttered, "Oh my God!" The camera lenses caught it all, the highlight glowing under chandeliers, Crockett's steady hand, Kavanaugh's smirk faltering. His eyes blinked rapidly. His lips parted, closed, parted again. The arrogance evaporated. Crockett leaned forward, her words now ice. "You don't trap me with hypotheticals. You trap yourself with your rulings." It was not just a reply. It was a demolition. The chamber erupted. Gasps turned to applause, claps cracking against marble like thunder. Activists whispered fiercely, "She got him." Reporters' hands flew to recorders. And Kavanaugh sat back, stunned, stripped of laughter. The justice shuffled his papers, avoiding eye contact. His once loose smirk vanished. His robe looked heavier now, more shroud than armor. The respect he once commanded drained from the room. Instead, it flowed to Crockett. Her calm, her steel, her evidence. The underdog stood taller than marble itself. The chamber's atmosphere shifted. It was no longer just history, it felt like justice. A reversal had occurred, and everyone in the room knew it. The laugh was dead. The robe was cracked. The outside world did not wait. Minutes after the exchange, clips went viral. On Twitter, hashtag Crockett Clapback and hashtag Kavanaugh Exposed trended number 1 and 2. Tweets piled up by the second. She didn't bring receipts, she brought the ruling itself. She turned his trap into his grave. On TikTok, edits flooded timelines. Crockett's calm reach for the paper set to dramatic music. Kavanaugh's smirk fading in slow motion. Captions flashing. "This is how power breaks." One edit hit 10 million views in hours. The caption, "You don't trap me with hypotheticals. You trap yourself with your rulings." Memes dominated Instagram. Kavanaugh red-faced beside Crockett's icy glare. Split screen. How it started versus how it ended. Podcasts broke down the audio frame by frame. Late-night comedians replayed the laugh-turned-silence as punchline. The internet crowned its victor. But moments are not just about virality. They are about legacy. For Kavanaugh, this was a scar. A justice who prided himself on control had been dismantled by his own words, his own ruling. His credibility bore a permanent crack. For Crockett, this was ignition. From congresswoman to reformer, from sharp legislator to fearless symbol, Her reputation skyrocketed. She became proof that even marble could be shattered when truth struck with precision. Commentators called it the moment the marble cracked. Law schools added it to syllabi, a case study in the power of preparation against arrogance. And beyond individuals, it stirred movements. Petitions surged for judicial ethics reform. Citizens questioned unchecked power. Young activists quoted her line as mantra. It was no longer just a clapback. It was a turning point, a reminder carved into stone. Robes are not shields. Arrogance is not armor. And laughter cannot silence truth. Because sometimes, one sentence can echo louder than a gavel. And that was the day Jasmine Crockett stared down a Supreme Court justice and won.